Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants to this 132nd leadership conversation. Friends, please join me in welcoming the leader and speaker, Mr. Krishna Pera. Welcome, sir. Good evening and welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudhakar.
Sir, what I will do is a brief introduction and then hand it over back to you quickly. These are WiseViews leadership conversations, which we hold every Friday. And this is the 132nd in the series. We are fortunate to have Mr. Krishna Pera talking about how to build a data-driven organization. This will be for about, the opening remarks will be for about 20 minutes, followed by 40 minutes of Q&A. And I have this opportunity of introducing Mr. Krishna Pera. With over 3 decades of experience in IT and business transformation consulting, Mr. Krishna has worked across industry verticals. He has been head of global business services for a Singapore-listed $34 billion food and agribusiness company. And prior to that, he was the chief operating officer of a knowledge process outsourcing company specializing in digital content solutions for global information media companies. During his career, he has set up and scaled several businesses from scratch and successfully turned around one mid-sized services company. Mr. Krishna has pioneering experience in setting up and scaling shared services centers, captives, and ODCs for Fortune 500 companies, including the first ever in a validated environment. Decades of experience managing implementations and global rollouts of various enterprises technologies has provided him with a unique understanding of strategic information lifecycle management in transnational firms, as well as every conceivable issue faced by managers in making informed decisions. Mr. Krishna has an in-depth understanding of data, both structured and unstructured, and building search, retrieval, and repurposing solutions. Currently, he runs a consulting entity focused on enabling companies on their journey to become data-driven organizations. He's a strong believer in leveraging technology for transformation of business. Mr. Krishna also mentors startups working on innovative products and solutions. His articles on data-driven organization published in Data Science Central are highly popular with thousands of views and are frequently quoted by noted data science experts and global consulting companies. Mr. Krishna considers working towards a scalable process-driven success as against people-dependent success as the biggest challenge in most organizations. Mr. Krishna has a postgraduate degree in business management from IIM Bangalore and graduate degrees in law and engineering. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your time for this 132nd leadership conversation. I will also take a moment to introduce my esteemed colleague, Professor Prasad. He is the Senior Director in Academic Wing at ICFAI Group. He brings 3 decades of rich experience. He was an entrepreneur before becoming a corporate professional and an academic now. He is an alumnus of IIT Bombay and IIM Kolkata. He published several books, papers in journals, as well as papers in various conferences. Thank you so much, Professor Prasad, for joining. We will now be ready to actually listen to Mr. Krishna Pera. We are all ears, sir. We've been waiting for this moment entire week, and a large number of people have joined with very interesting questions, and we hope that you will set the context for us and understand what it takes actually to build data-driven organizations, and from thereafter, we will have Q&A. Over to you, sir. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, Sudhakar, and thank you, Prasad. So let me share my screen. Let me just give you a quick context to start with. Okay, so the content of this presentation is basically from a workshop I used to conduct for corporate companies. Used to be anywhere between a half a day workshop to 5 days workshop, but different 5 full days. I had given academic lectures only for ASCII and NASCOM till about last year, actually. Published a few articles in Data Science Central between 2016 and 19. Articles were very popular with thousands of downloads and endorsement from global consulting firms and data scientists. Then one of the publishers from Taylor and Francis had approached me, asking me if I could write a book. That happened to be just the month before the COVID. So it was quite opportune for me. So I ended up writing a book in a 2 years period. The book was published on 31st of December 22, 1st of January this year, actually. Book has been fairly successful for an academic come management book. Now it is a 2-credit course at IIM Udaipur and IIM Bangalore for last a couple of semesters. So let me quickly take you through management strategy workshop usually, and focused on enterprise analytics strategy and building a data-driven organization ground up. What am I going to cover in this 20 minutes presentation is a broad outline of the workshop. And why do this workshop? What will you learn, the importance, and what is the value that you get? Can you implement what you learn? Opportunities. I'm going to rush through this presentation and there'll be ample opportunity for you to ask me questions in the next 40 minutes once I complete the initial remarks. So becoming data-driven organization is no longer a choice. It's a survival necessity to compete effectively in the next decade. So this is something that I'm sure you'd have heard about actually. Now it's no longer just data-driven organization. They call it actually AI-powered data-driven organization. What does it mean to be a data-driven organization? And how can you build one? So that's a question that I was faced with about 12, 13 years back. I used to attend a lot of, I used to frequently speak in international seminars for shared services those days. In one of the shared services conferences that I went to, almost everybody talked about data-driven organization. People I spoke to, wherever I talked to them, whoever I talked to, they all said they have something or other going on data-driven organization. So considering that the subject of those conferences was completely different, it was quite surprising to me. So when I started asking them, what exactly do you mean by data-driven organization? Are you going to drive all the decisions in the company through data? Most of them did not have an answer. There were all kinds of people out there actually. About 50% of them were from consulting companies, big 4, big 3 consulting firms. Even those people didn't have too much of an insight as to what needs to be done. So subsequently, my own company, the company that I was working for, actually asked me to build an analytics COE, Center of Excellence. And a few months later, actually, my boss called me and he said, look, I've been hearing about this data-driven organization. Is there a way you can actually build one? So that's when I started actually doing research on the subject. Actually, there were no references. There was nothing those days. Now there are a few books, definitely. And the process was put together painstakingly by us, actually. We wanted to create a roadmap and a business case to start with. Tell the top management that here is the value that you can get out of it. So that's how this entire thing started. While there are no questions about how an investment into analytics could work wonders in enhancing the business performance of a company, you would have heard about it. Gartner says actually that 80 to 85% of analytics projects fail to deliver value. May not be not all value, but they fail to deliver intended value. If you expect $1 million of saving, you might end up getting about 100,000, or you may not even get that actually. So what constitutes a right investment? Where exactly do you spend your money, your budgets that you get for analytics projects? That was a bit of an enigma for most of us. Most of us were trying to work on analytics for the first time. So few companies get it right, definitely. So what is that they do differently was a question that I had. The few questions who get it right are the companies with lots of data and lots of real-time data and complete data. Specifically, the online companies, everything happens on the same platform. So their data is relevant, current, and complete. Companies like Google, Amazon, these are the kind of companies where the data is complete, they have relevant data, and they have complete data. There's nothing missing actually. Everything is on one platform. It's very easy for them to access that data and run analytics on top of it. But the other companies, actually, the financial services companies that I work for, the IT services companies, or manufacturing companies, it's a different matter altogether. What we have realized very early is that it has to be an enterprise-wide initiative. I mean, you can't actually do it. And we wanted to do a pilot initially, but it was just not making sense, actually. What kind of people? There's no way, actually, the kind of decisions that are taken in one part of the organizations are different from the other part of the organization. So there was no way, actually, we can run a pilot. So there was nothing like a a small sample of entire organization that we could choose and actually run a pilot there. So we decided actually it led up a strategic initiative, and we needed to look at the organization as a whole and try and understand what could be done. And understandably, the organization and specifically the CFO insisted that there has to be a roadmap and a business case, and otherwise there'll be no budgets. And now I'm not sure how many of you understand what this means actually, the animal called data-driven organization, and why a standard, reasonably successful everyday organization should aspire to become an AI-powered data-driven organization. What is there an urgency? Is there a compelling reason? What about the costs and risks actually? What exactly are the core benefits? Is it worth the trouble? So that's one question. Then what happens if you miss the bus? Suppose if you don't do this and you are happy doing whatever that you are doing currently, what happens? And if you do decide to become a data-driven organization, how exactly are you going to go about it? What kind of effort would it require? And how much it is going to cost? What dollar value you can get out of it? How exactly are you going to create a business case? Business case would automatically mean you need to estimate what is the dollar value you're going to get, and what exactly are the dollars you're going to pump into that initiative. You need to calculate your IRR and PV, even terminal value actually in most companies. Okay, so a little more context actually. As like I said, actually Gartner estimates over 80% of all analytics projects fail to deliver the intended value. CDAO is Data Analytics Officer. There are all kinds of names given actually. Some people call it a Chief Digital Officer. Some people call it CDAO, CDO. So most of them do the similar job, if not the same job. So the CDAOs think data-driven organizations are distant in most companies. Actually, while there are roles created and people recruited, most companies are not there still as that actually, especially while they are still struggling to explain the value from analytics. If 85% of your projects are failing to deliver value, what exactly can you tell the management? How can you go and actually ask them to give a large-scale budget for building a data-driven organization? You just can't, right? So a few isolated success of one-time leveraging big data for decision making does not make an organization data-driven. It's not that all projects are unsuccessful. A few do deliver value, but a one-time leveraging of big data, large data for decision making just does not make an organization data-driven. And all the CIOs and CDAOs know that. Okay, so there are two parts in the workshop. One is how to build a data-driven, creating a roadmap and a business case. How to build a data-driven organization, derive real dollar value from investments in data analytics and AI. This is basically strategy to execution, the complete 9 yards of it. Part 2 is the essential components of enterprise analytics strategy for enabling and sustaining. Once you build a data-driven organization, how exactly are you going to sustain it? Obviously, you need to re-engineer your data lifecycle from data to decisions, all the way to decisions, and the importance of data quality. If you don't have the right data, you may as well not attempt this. Then you obviously need to fix your IT strategy. IT is like that container. It's like blood vessel for blood. If data is a blood, IT is like that container. So you need to fix your IT strategy and data strategy. You also need to, most important is actually you need to have data governance. You need to have a data governance framework, and that data governance framework has to work, and it has to deliver. Then only you'll be able to implement something of this kind. Finally, the last part is actually the data-driven organization and DDO in action actually. So how does it work for one of the functions, the data-driven marketing? So that's what is covered in the book. That's what I cover in a typical workshop as well. The workshop actually would lead to a due diligence typically. We'll talk about it a little later when I answer the questions. Data-driven marketing is about the concept called micro-marketing and geospatial analytics. If there is anybody who would like to understand that, I'll be happy to cover it. So what exactly do I do? I do what I call actually identify the big decisions, the 10% of the decisions that account for 90% of business outcomes. If you're trying to, prioritize everything for everybody, it's not going to work. You obviously need to prioritize a few projects actually. So which projects do you prioritize? Analytics are essentially meant for building decision support systems for a specific set of decisions. So which decisions do you choose? So for choosing those decisions, we try and actually identify the big decisions, the 10% of the decisions that account for 90% of business outcomes. It's not easy. Why is it not easy? Because it's analyzed. We need to identify annualized dollar value of each decision, and it's very difficult to estimate. We also need to remember big decisions are not necessarily those taken by the CEOs. When we initial stages in due diligence, when I went and asked people actually what are the big decisions in this company, people have told me invariably everybody talked about the investment decisions, actually large value capital equipment they purchased or a company that they bought, acquired and stuff like that, actually. So those were the decisions that they took. I asked them actually, what about the operational, thousands of operational decisions that you take every day? Like actually, if you are a retail chain, the safety stock that you fix up, actually, whether you fix it up for 3 sigma or 2 sigma could make a huge difference into your profitability and your income and stuff like that. I tried understanding what kind of operational decisions take, because these operational decisions it's the same decision that's taken by thousands of managers across the world in multinationals, and they take the decision thousands of times in a year, actually. So is there a way you can not only build a system to support that decision, actually you can automate that decision? Is there a way to do that? Was what I was trying to do. So what we tried doing is identify those 10% of the decisions which influence 90% of business outcomes by looking at all kinds of decisions, the strategic, tactical, and operational decisions. And we, the specific focus was on operational decisions, the decisions that are taken by maximum number of managers, maximum number of times in a year. Once you identify those 10% of decisions, we try to reprioritize the decisions based on other factors, based on the seniority of the decision makers. Obviously, if you have senior people taking the decision, their time is more valuable. Obviously, you need to prioritize them. So there was some reprioritization done. Then data availability. There's no point trying to build a analytic solution or AI solution on top of a decision if there's no data available. So data is the key. So we looked at data availability, data dollar value, and stuff like that. Create a big decision roadmap, essentially focusing on the analytical, the 10% of the decisions, and work out the data behind each decision, data that is needed to support and improve the quality of decisions, data required for automating the decisions, required for possible AI investments. So what is that we do differently out here? I mean, once again, this is the approach that I have taken. To my knowledge, actually, there's only one other company which has tried this, actually. That was Bain for Nike, a Nike project in 2007 to 2009. Apart from that, I have not seen any other references, actually, of what I'm going to talk about. So typical analytics projects that you do, whether you do it internally or whether you outsource it to Mu Sigma kind of companies, latent view kind of companies, all that they do is actually the first thing they'll ask you is, give me your data. I'll try and build some analytics on top of it. You try and understand if you can make some decisions based on those insights. So it's not like actually you're building analytics specific to a decision. You have data, you're running some analytics on top of it, actually, and then you need to try and find out, are there some insights, are they useful to me? We have a lot of data, you need to clean, integrate, normalize, obviously, then you need to create a visualization, and then you need to find out are there insights out here? Can I take any decision from this? That's a typical analytics flow in most companies. What we have tried doing is start from decisions, that is decision of importance, and the 10% of the decisions that account for 90% of business outcomes, so the big decisions. We looked at decision criteria and constraint, data behind the decision. Once you have this, then look at the data available and data gaps. All the data that you need, is it available within the company, or are there gaps? Then for the data that you don't have a data sourcing strategy, then the analytics to improve that decision. So that's a flow that we had adopted. So decision, you start with the decision, then you look at analytics gap. What is the kind of analytics that you currently have, and what exactly is the kind of analytics that you need actually to improve the quality of the decision, and the data sourcing integration strategy, data normalization strategy. Then if fixing it for one time doesn't make sense, actually, you need to go back and understand the data lifecycle. So for the data, that you need for the decision, where exactly that data is coming from, what is the source of the data, are there data standards in the company? So global data rationalization, global data definitions and standards, data formats, basically re-engineer the entire data life cycle from the data source to decisions completely. So this is what we tried doing. Since we were focusing on a small number of decisions and the data related to that, it did work for us. And the idea was actually, if you focus on 90% of the business outcomes, you can call yourself a data-driven organization the moment you complete the project, actually, they complete the assignment. It took us some 2.5 years plus, but it did provide us value, real value. So this is called data conundrum. Essentially, in any organization that you go and actually search for data, the data that you need for any particular purpose, actually, you start looking for the data, you would only have a part of the data that you need within the company. Even within that part, accessible formatted data would be a very small percentage. So do you have all the data that you need? The answer is always no, almost always. This is called actually decision first process. Actually, it's one of the associate companies that I work with, called DMS, Decision Management Systems, USA. So this is actually trying to understand actually what is the data behind the decision. So this is one of the things. I won't go into the detail of this actually. For each decision, you can try and identify what exactly is the kind of data that can improve the quality of the decision. So what's your cost? You're trying to make the organization 100% data driven, but is worried about stories of failed analytics investments. 5% of analytics investment deliver real value. Some 10 to 15% deliver some value. That's what Gartner tells you. So you need to create a business case and roadmap. So what questions do you ask yourself actually to start with? How does one define data-driven organization? When exactly do we say an organization is 100% data-driven? How does an organization create a roadmap? What should be prioritized? Knowns or unknowns? Again, this is a concept you need to understand in detail. Actually, there's a chapter on this in the book. Actually, I won't go into the detail right now, but for those interested, actually, I'll be happy to cover it. This is the other key question. Do I need to fix the data quality first? If I don't have the right kind of data, is there any point in actually attempting this? How do I know my data governance is adequate? Do I need to strengthen data governance first? Do I need to fix my IT strategy and data strategy before embarking on a journey to become data-driven? These are all questions that you need to ask yourself. So let me skip the Dilbert cartoon for want of time. How islands of disconnected. Many companies, you go and talk to customers, actually. They all talk about, do you have data? They say, we have huge amount of data. We don't know what to do with, actually. So it's like data everywhere. They have islands of disconnected IT applications in different locations that do not talk to each other. In fact, domestic companies are slightly better. I'm talking about manufacturing companies and financial services companies. They're slightly better. They have fewer applications, and applications do talk to each other. But the moment you're talking about a large transnational firm, multinational firm, the bigger the firm, the bigger the issues are. They often lack common data standards, standard data definitions. There's basically there's too much of democracy. People do talk about data democracy these days as well, actually. Too much of democracy in the sense of local IT leaders, the IT directors and local CEOs, they take their calls, what kind of IT to implement, what kind of data they need to store, what to store, what to not to store, how long they're going to store that data. All those decisions are taken by the country management, typically. And as a result, actually, there's no cohesive data strategy or IT strategy across the world, actually. So the consolidation of accounts in most of the companies, actually, at the global level is a mess. Sometimes, typically, the audited financial results that need to come out within a week. If you know, with the Infosys, Wipro, TCS, all the big four, actually, they come out with their financials, audited financial between 9th of July to 17th of July, within a week to 2 weeks, actually, after the quarter completes, actually, after the year completes. Whereas in many of these multinationals, it may take anywhere between 6 weeks to 12 weeks for them to come give you the audited financials. The reason is actually that the data is neither accurate nor in one place actually. So they all actually fight against the odds. They put thousands of people doing the data reconciliation for them to actually make some meaningful consolidated account statement so that can be submitted to auditors. So this is the truth of every every large multinational corporation across the world. Few companies are exceptions. I'm not saying that everybody is bad. I know one pharma company called Roche actually that works probably better than Amazon. Not true of most of those other companies. 80% of the companies are bad. Let me put it that way. 20% of the companies are pretty decent. Granularity for drill down. Again, these are things that one needs to understand. What does data granularity means? What are data standards? What are data definitions? What exactly is master data management? All this again is something, there's something called a theory of asymmetric information as applied to information systems, knowns and unknowns. All this structured data, unstructured data, all this needs to be understood if you are attempting something of this kind. Okay, so the real question is, we covered this. Making analytics work, again, I broadly covered this. What do I cover in the book? Some of the stuff actually. I talk about concepts like data manifest, data catalog, data logistics, information supply and demand, the theory of asymmetric information. Decision analysis is the key to derive the big dollar value from analytics actually. Big decisions, how to identify the art and science of decision analysis, building big decision roadmap, data strategy, IT strategy, etc. So a little about actually AI and generative AI. People ask me actually what exactly is the difference between AI powered and data driven. AI is a tool. Let's understand that it helps in automating action based on insights. Okay, so whatever actions that you take, you could automate using artificial intelligence. Whatever thinking that you do, once you have analysis in front of you, if you would like a machine to do your job, actually, you could use AI. Generative AI is a little, repetitive jobs are automated using AI that we understand so far. Generative AI is a little different. It actually speeds up the journey from insights to impacts faster. It improves the quality of insights too. Actually, basically, it can read a lot of data much faster. Both structured and unstructured. When I wrote the book, actually, it's very difficult to create data that you don't have. There's concept called synthetic data, data that you can create actually usually used for training data in AI models actually. Even the company data that you don't have, if you want to create it actually from your data lake, you could actually use AI. So probably I spoke a little too soon. So this is one of the fastest growing branches out there. Why do this workshop if you're a company? So let me focus on, it's a transformational roadmap. It'll change the way you work, and it'll make sure 100% of your analytics projects actually deliver value. All that apart, actually, you may save 50% or more from organizational overheads, SG&A specifically, even manufacturing overheads, 50% or more. In one company that I had worked for, the whole thing started with, is there a way I can cut down my $100 million, my overheads by $100 million? In the 2.5 years that I had gone through this exercise, in terms of scale, actually, that $100 million, we were able to actually reduce it to something like, reduce it by about $70 million, the overheads. That $70 million directly adds to the bottom line of the company. That's what you need to understand. It's much more than what we had invested into that entire initiative over 2.5 years. It's double the amount that, including software and hardware and everything that put together, actually, implementation time and what we paid to the consultants, all that put together, actually, it's about double of that. $70 million was double of that. The other thing that you need to understand is you also cut down the cycle times by half or more. You also improve the managerial control. You improve the drill down visibility for the top management into global operations. Earlier, if they wanted to understand what exactly is the number out here, what exactly are the components, actually, if they need to understand what is contributing to this this particular number, the consolidated number that you get at global headquarters, the drill down is a nightmare. So that's something that we were able to deliver. The drill down visibility was something that we were able to deliver to the company. If you're a student from a business school, I don't know how many of your students actually, I thought I would quickly cover this as well. Most of you, in the name of AI, what you learn is some Falcon or something of that kind, some generative AI model, if you're lucky, or some theory actually, deep learning algorithms. Some people learn data science algorithms, actually, random forest and stuff like that. You don't know how to use them most of the time, actually. So the field is kind of actually evolving so fast, actually. Every month I hear new phrases, actually. I myself, I don't understand all the phrases that come out every month. So it's a struggle, actually, trying to keep pace with all the jargon that they throw at you. So what you need to know is that strategy. Given that there is a new technology, new technique that is available to me, actually, what do I do with it? How do I deliver value using the technology and technique that is available in the market? So that's what this course is about, actually. This is a hype cycle for artificial intelligence. I don't know if you're a student, actually, I don't expect you to know this, actually, but if you are from the industry, I'm sure you would have seen this. The innovation triggered to peak of inflated expectations for each of the technologies, trough of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment, then plateau of productivity. So you have to wait a few years before a technology becomes useful in the industry. Actually, that's something if you hurry, you end up actually not doing it right. Okay, so what you also need to know is actually that there are all kinds of estimates, actually, but let's go by what McKinsey talks about. McKinsey talks about actually generative AI can add anywhere between 2.6 trillion to 4.4 trillion to the global economy. That's like actually, one Germany's GDP, actually, practically. Okay, so that is what would be added to the global economy is what they are talking about. The other thing that we need to know is actually that 133 million to 800 million jobs could be lost, permanently lost, displaced due to automation. So for you to survive, you need to know how to use AI. If you don't know how to build AI algorithms, at least how to know how to use AI is something that you need to know as a must, actually. So this is a survival necessity if you're a student of a business school, or even if you're a student of engineering college. Engineering college students, they usually learn some, data science. They'll do at least 1 or 2 data science courses, some AI technology, deep learning technology that they learn and actually come out. I don't know whether they'll be able to use it the moment they come out or not. I don't know what is the depth of what they're taught within the colleges, actually. But they do something. But if you're from a business school, you at least need to know how to use generative AI and deliver value. So that's what this workshop course is about. So this is Sherlock Holmes, actually. And let me end here. I think I've taken a little longer than I intended to. So let me quickly answer the questions that you may have.
Fine, sir. Thank you so much. Kindly stop sharing. Yeah, that's an intended detail for what is actually done in one's attempt to build a data-driven organization. That's a pretty large landscape, as I understand, prima facie. But thank you, sir, for providing us this preview of how there are problems, and problems are addressed by deciding to take a decision. Let me put it like that, and therefore work backwards of putting the analytics framework in place, finding out the gap, and then looking for gaps in data, and then trying to establish data standards and policy and governance from there on. I think everything else is centrally themed around this solving a problem, a business problem. But powered by AI and driven by data as a theme in various organizations, as you mentioned, is still catching its maturity, its stability. The CDAOs are struggling to convince the management about the benefits and trying to build a business case of these situations. Yes, it's an ongoing phenomenon, and largely, as we understand, even before this presentation was made, is that there's a lot of data that's available for all of us, data everywhere, but very difficult to draw the insight. Even if there are insights, how do you convert that into decisions, that business decisions that one takes? Pretty large. We would like to use up the entire time for the Q&A. We hopefully have another 40 minutes to go for it. Sir, the structure of the Q&A is like this. There will be two clusters of Q&A. The first cluster will be taken up by Professor Prasad. I'll come back to the second cluster. In the second cluster, we will open the mic for some of the participants who would like to talk to you directly. So therefore, that becomes a little more interactive as well. But this is a subject where there are lots of questions. You have also posed several questions on your slides. Those could be actually direct questions, but we have a few application-oriented questions in the second cluster as well. I want to once again thank all the members who have joined us around the screen. They hail from various domains, technology, education, media, some of them are from sports. Yeah, I think that's what I could roughly assess at this point in time. We welcome all of them, and we welcome all of them to ask questions. Without much ado, I request Professor Prasad to start the cluster number 1. Thank you, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, sir, for portraying the immensity of what it can do. So the outcome I'll seek to achieve, I'm cutting my question short so that it is not detailed. It is of interest to an audience who wants to think about this journey, and it will be connected to their respective areas of work. Many of them may not be at CEO level. So I'm going to target it in that fashion and generate some interest so that some more questions can come out. So the first one is from data lakes. The data looks more ocean sized. Forget about ocean, looks galaxy sized, the way it is. So if from your experience, since you have done many of these projects, how does one start? I mean, start, filter, optimize, and where do you start with that first thing that you do? How do you, can you give us a use case from your experience and how that happened? Of course, it will be different in different organizations, but at least it will kind of illustrate the thinking process for people. So
I would actually highly recommend you always start from a decision. Whenever you have a project, actually, you start from the reverse side. What exactly is the decision? What is the dollar value that you're getting out of it? More importantly, if there is a way you can actually figure out what is the dollar value of whatever that you're going to do, try and figure out that dollar value first. What exactly is the decision that you're trying to improve? That is where you start from. That way, you are unlikely to go wrong. So you start from the decision, try and understand what kind of data that currently supports that decision, and what kind of data is required to support that decision actually versus what data is currently supporting that decision. How is the decision taken? At times, actually, is it a one-time decision or is it a repetitive decision? If it is a repetitive decision that is taken by multiple people across the organization, then you probably need to understand what are the variations of it actually. So you need to have some method to, there's no point actually trying to build point solutions across the organization. You need to build one solution that could be used by everybody in the organization. Whoever takes that decision should be able to use that solution that you build actually. So try and understand what are the variations, what are the difficulties faced by different people. And then once you identify the decision, you need to understand what exactly is the analytics that you do, what exactly is the data required to that analytics. And then you understand what exactly, it's possible that you may not have all the data that you need within the company. You need to understand how much of data is available within the company, how much of data is available outside the company. What most organizations have is these days, and those companies, I'm talking about multinationals, they all have invested into a data warehouse some time back actually. They have, basically the CIO is given a budget and he is expected to spend that money. So every year, whatever money he has, actually would spend on some technology or something, some implementation. And if you ask them, actually, they'll be solving the same problems again and again. Same issue. The budget actually goes into resolving the same issue again and again. And the CFO or the rest of the management are not technically literate in most companies, actually, that they don't know enough to actually question the CIO. So they get away with it. The data is all thrown into a data lake. data lake is like a dump yard actually. So it's all in silos. And for you to figure out what data that you need, whether that data is there in the data lake itself is a question mark in most companies. So some companies who are serious about analytics actually have invested into what is called an advanced analytics platform that sits on top of a data lake. That kind of actually builds a structure on top of your data, your structured and unstructured data. It's a painstaking work actually. It's not simple. While the people who sell the analytics platform will tell you it's simple, I'll be able to do it in no time actually, but it's a painstaking work for you to figure out what data that you need. How do you build actually the ETL models, extract, transform, load models on top of that data lake? And then data consistency. Same data might exist in two different places in two different forms, at two different standards, multiple. So data quality, data standards, data definitions are different in different systems, and all that would have gone into your data lakes. For you to figure all of it is a nightmare. So my experience is actually that there's no one single solution actually. You need to understand. If you're lucky, you may find all the data that you need within the organization and available to you, given in some form and format.
Can you give us a use case, sir? Can you give us a use case, though it may not be a framework? Can you give us a use case to understand specifics with business, business kind of language?
Yeah, see, the most easy to understand use cases are, for example, actually the Priceline or Expedia. Those kind of companies actually, when they use analytics, so their typical challenge is actually to find out. They actually must book these rooms in the hotels, and they have a deal with each of these hotels, and they would offer them at different prices to different customers actually, right? For example, and they can collect all kinds of things. For example, when you do when you are searching for a room at a specific place on your Google, from Google also they try and collect the data actually. They try and collect the data. So if you are the person searching for a room, you'll get it one price. Your wife, if she searches on a different machine, she would get a different price from the same bookings.com or someplace actually, Expedia that you're checking out. All that happens, they're able to sift through and understand at what price this customer is likely to actually purchase, actually take the decision and book this room. That's actually a bit of a calculation that takes a certain amount of actually analysis for them to figure out. At what price, what exactly is the tipping point? Below a certain price, they don't make enough money. Above a certain price, actually, the occupancy would be lower. They won't be able to sell everything that they would like to sell. So they need to have an optimal price at which actually they would sell maximum number of, they need to maximize the revenue that they are making, dollar value that they are making. So that's, for example, is one decision that you could actually relate to. Easy for you to understand, and easy for those people, even your students from the business schools to understand. Any decision that you take can be improved. It's just a question of, if you tell me the decision, I'll tell you how to improve it. What data is required actually. Any decision that you take, big or small, can be improved. I'm sure, the question is only whether you have the data available or not. If you don't have the data, you can't improve it actually. But if you do have the data, you can always build a model to improve that decision.
Thank you, sir. I think this use case can give us ideas of what kind of analytics will be then required, and then therefore what kind of data, the kind of framework that you presented earlier. The next question, sir. I mean, much has been written about the fact that biggest obstacle to data-driven businesses is not technical, but it is cultural. What are your perspectives on this, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, see, my apologies actually for being cynical. Most companies, they use this phrase loosely actually, in the sense everybody talks about a data culture as if it's like some panacea for all else that you're facing within that company. You have the right kind of culture actually. If you overnight, you can build a data-driven organization. That's how people talk about actually. All that you need to understand in about data culture is that there is certain amount of recognition on part of people who capture the data, people who do the data design, and even the people who take the decisions within the company, that data is important. that you need to have a method around it actually, rather than, for example, I don't know how many of you understand chart of accounts actually. Chart of accounts is, how many of you understand a ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning software like SAP? Chart of accounts is basically a list of accounts that you create. Something like travel expenses by BU, for example. If you have some 70 subsidiaries and 75 geographies across the world, each geography, each of the subsidiaries actually would have a different method to create the chart of accounts. Some people would call it all travel expenses are put into one account. Some people actually would say travel expenses for top management separately, middle management separately, but top, lower management separately. Some companies actually would create a travel expenses account for train travel separately, flight travel separately, and local travel separately. So each of those guys create different data definitions. If you understand what I'm talking about. So the data definition itself is different out there. And if at the headquarters, if you're trying to consolidate that whole thing, to start with, actually, the head office is normally they give out an Excel sheet format or something actually saying that I need this data. And what these people do within this subsidiaries and different geographies is actually burn the midnight oil, put brute force actually to somehow collate the data from your systems, and then you do Excel sheet consolidation, actually give it to top management. So that's how it happens actually in most companies. The culture part of it actually, just coming back to your question, the culture is actually recognition that, look, this matters and you need to do it right at one go. That's what I would tell them actually. They, in most companies, while they talk about the culture, in the end, actually, it's not, it's only the loosely used phrase. That's all that is there actually. They conduct some seminars and they pay some consultants big money, and that's all that is there to it actually. So the culture is about actually recognition that data is important, in my opinion.
Okay, here, I mean, I would try to relate it to say down at the place where actually it is going to get used and where it's going to get useful. If there are 20 people who need to understand what this is and don't relate to a lot of terminology which is getting used and are not able to see what purpose it helps them for. Exactly. I mean, if I'm spending this sort of time, how is it going to help me? And so people are coming from that direction in terms of the mindsets that they apply to this. And therefore, the phrase that you used about recognition that data is important at that ground level, what are those issues? And those issues will drive a lot of how this whole implementation is going to create value. So the question comes a bit from there. And I think what you said about the recognition that data is important is actually the crux of it. I mean, that is where it impacts the mindset. And there has to be somebody who goes about understanding this, communicating this, and getting it across so that finally it gets done when the decision is implemented at the top.
Right, absolutely right. So in the consulting assignments that I've worked with, actually, most places, I started with what I call master data management, actually, MDM. If they already have and many of those companies do have an MDM module that they paid for, implemented, but it's a defunct actually. It's not being used, is how I would find in those places. So the what I typically start up with is actually making that MDM module functional again. What MDM is, to make it simple, all the master data across all the applications, IT applications that you have, creating one standard. And for example, if you want to create a new customer, you create that customer in the master data module, and then you replicate it in all the different applications where that different country IT systems where that customer actually buys from, right? So, for example, let me take, for example, actually Suzuki in India. Suzuki Global actually has got a system. It has got a large ERP actually that and the country instances, and there is a global instance of SAP that they use. The customers, the customers that they have out here, their customers are typically the dealers. Actually, the primary sale happens at the dealers level. Sometimes it is to the end customers actually. So imagine an end customer comes and buys out there actually. Yeah, I'm not talking about individual customers, a large company that is buying cars. For example, somebody like the Tata Hotels, Hotels India, or one of those large companies actually, they would like to buy 100 cars. Okay, so they have presence in multiple countries and multiple cities within India. So you can create a customer saying that Oberoi, Oberoi is Tata Group, right? Oberoi, Mumbai, you can create a separate customer code. Oberoi, Calcutta, you can create a separate customer code. Oberoi in Hyderabad, you could create a separate customer code, or you can create one large master customer code called Oberoi and create a sub-customer code for each of them, so that actually whatever sales that you make, you will be able to consolidate them at a later point of time. So having a method about how do you create master data is what I start off from. You need to fix master data first, then you need to fix transactional data, how it is captured, with what kind of granularity. And I also look at actually what kind of data is currently being captured. Are you leaving out some data not being captured at all? Because I have also seen actually the important data that they need to capture exists only on Excel sheets, not in any IT applications actually. So one of the things that I would tell them is actually somehow bring all the data that you have in IT applications in Excel sheet into IT applications. Stop using Excel sheets is something that I would tell them. Excel sheet data is actually dangerous. The number of Excel sheets that run within a company is an indication of how badly that company is running. Excel sheets, you can't validate the data. You can't understand actually where the data is coming from. It's an auditor's nightmare, if I may call it that actually. An auditor was given an Excel sheet to validate, actually, he can't find out what is the source of that data. And suppose if there is a consolidated number that comes from 10,000 invoices actually, and he has to physically check all the 10,000 invoices to understand where that number is coming from, and if it is coming from Excel sheets. Whereas if it is an ERP application, actually, he could query it the way he wants to, drill down it the way he wants to, and you'll be able to validate that number in a second. Okay, so I hope I'm making it clear actually for the participants to understand.
Okay, I'll take this question later if we have time. But I'm actually coming from people who are nowhere near any of that. Yeah. And you've got organizations where IT is used in a very conventional sense, and it's not even gone to an ERP kind of a thing. But I leave the question at that. I think I have one more question, but I'll come back for that later if time permits. I'm handing it back to Professor Rao.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. We have actually a tough time ahead to actually close it very soon. But we will involve everyone around to ask the questions. I'll just raise one or two points and then hand it over to the people who can actually directly connect with you. What are the skills needed to pursue a career in this field if one has to become a good data analyst, and how one has to shine in this career? Any top 2-3 points, because some of the members who have joined are also looking for these kind of points.
It depends actually on what you are aiming for. Are you aiming to become a consultant in the market? Are you trying to become a techie, somebody who is a coder? The skills are different for different roles. Okay, so if you are from a business school, you should aspire to become a consultant, if you ask me actually. There's nothing wrong in being a coder. If you're from a business school also, you can go and actually code. In fact, the more coding that you do, the better for you. There's nothing wrong. But if you do just the coding and if you don't understand the functional aspects of it, the business value of it, actually, then you are losing out. Okay, so it's different skills actually. One is you need to have the strong foundation of what exactly you need with all that knowledge that you gain, all these technology tools that you have available actually. Where are they used and how are they used actually is something that you need to understand. Like the course that I'm talking about, you need to understand this in entirety. That if you're a consultant, you need to understand this in its entirety as a must. But if you're a techie, then you can afford to actually operate in a compartment, in a small compartment where somebody comes and tells you, look, this is what I'm looking for. Can you code and give it to me? So then you can actually work only on that. See, the tools are dime a dozen. There are thousands of tools, hundreds of tools actually. ETL, while it is being it is getting popular out here now. It has been in existence from mid-90s onwards. Actually, the Informaticas and ab initio's and stuff like that, they were being used for ages. Actually, if you look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant, actually, you can see whatever is actually what are the tools which are in the vogue in the leadership quadrant. You need to try and focus on learning one or two of them is what I would usually tell people. There's no point trying to learn everything that is there in the market. This is like actually learning music. If you're a coder, if you learn one technology and if you broadly understand the coding concept, you can learn any language that you need to learn at any point of time. So that's not a big deal actually. So you need not actually go all over the place and madly learn everything that is there in the market actually. In fact, the reason why I tell them to look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant, the tools that were popular a couple of years back are now are nowhere. You unnecessarily spend time on them. Nobody expected, people didn't even know that generative AI kind of a thing existed before 2021, barely 2 years back actually. So the OpenAI, becoming popular and the CEO being changed and all that happened within just a couple of years actually. Yeah, so you need to know that it's a fast-moving world actually. So all that you need to know is that you need to understand the concepts well. You need to understand one or two technologies well. I would actually strongly suggest if somebody is looking at generative AI, they need to understand either OpenAI or truly open source softwares like Falcon actually. If they learn that, it will be useful is what I usually tell them.
Great, sir. Thank you. I think what you mentioned is that we don't have to madly go after some tools or tool-based kind of skills, but broad approach in terms of whether you would like to be a consultant or a techie.
How do you, there's that, I'm hitting a hammer and you're getting 1,000 rupees for it actually. You need to know why you are doing it actually, rather than, you get only 1 rupee for hitting the hammer, 99 rupees for knowing what to do, why are you doing, where are you hitting it, right? So it's exactly that.
Exactly. Not just be good at coding, but understand the implications of that code, and the consultants completely have a comprehensive understanding of business implications as well, whereas techies can afford to be a little more compartmental. So let's go to the second question, sir.
Yeah, so what do techies do when they become senior? Are they going to do coding for their entire lives? So some of them actually get into project management, and I don't know if my guess is actually project management is one of the things that will be done by robots into the future. It's a repetitive skill. Actually, there's just logic that's available. So my guess is actually there'll be a robot project manager for every project into the future actually. So you don't exactly become a project manager. What you can't do, what robots can't do for you is what you need to focus on. So you need to try and understand what is the business value, business implication of everything that you do. And that is what I tell people even in the class actually where I teach.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Focus on the business value and the business implications. The other thing one participant was trying to understand is what are the opportunities in medical, pharma, and biotech? Can you present some use cases? Maybe broadly one use case you can talk about just to address this particular question. So then I'll request Bhaskar to ask his question.
Right, sir.
See, there are millions of use cases actually in pharma and life sciences. Happen to be the field where I spent most of my life actually. My consulting life has been spent in pharma and life sciences companies. It's not that we have not done analytics in pharma and life sciences. I used to manage for one of those large pharma companies where I had set up the validated offshore development center. We used to manage some 800 R&D applications. Those R&D applications are used with 3 people. Some of them are used by 3 people, some of them are used by 5 people. The code is written by the scientist himself. I'm hearing some noise. Can I go on? Or?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So I would I don't know if you want the most commonly used use case. If that is what I'm going to talk about, then I don't know how many of you understand the genetic data, the pharmacogenomic data, as it's called actually. For example, each drug when you bring in a new drug, the new drug application is about 100,000 pages to start with actually. That FDA takes ages for approving a new drug, essentially because there's a huge process out there actually. They need to go through all the 100,000 pages and make sense out of it. And then there are 4 phases in which actually the clinical trials are done. Phase 1 to phase 4. And they need to understand, even after the phase 3, suppose the drug clears, actually, thanks to COVID, actually, most people understand this stuff these days now, actually, that what phase 1 is, phase 3 is. They may have seen the movie too, actually. What was that movie called? So when you go for, even after phase 3, you still have what is called as when the drug is in the market, you have adverse events that are reported, AER. Adverse events are basically the unforeseen reactions to the drug, essentially. One of the things that you check, you so meticulously check, the reason why the drug is in the development, drug discovery and development is basically because you try and understand whether that molecule has any adverse reactions in people. Then you also do some amount of actually random sampling to try and understand if there are no adverse events in all kinds of populations, or is it, so for example, if you have done all your clinical trials in Americas, what if the drug is launched in Africa or Europe, where some antigen is not there in those people, in those populations, actually, what happens in those populations? So you need to have that clinical trials done across the world in different populations, actually, right? If each time you have an adverse event, actually, that the adverse event after phase 3, those adverse events go through a huge amount of actually the data analysis. You try and understand whether it is something that happened on only one place. There are unreported adverse events across the world. Then you try and actually compare the population data and the kind of antigens that they have across the world, actually. That's a huge database that you have, actually. And you also compare it with the adverse event data that you have, pharmacogenomic data, the molecules that you have, and what exactly is happening. That comparison is something that usually that takes huge, that number crunching takes a substantial amount of time. But now with the Hadoop-based big data crunching algorithms, MapReduce and stuff like that, actually, you are able to do it much faster. I don't know whether AI has already gone into it. If that is available, it's a proprietary technology. We don't really know about it, actually. It's possible that pharma companies have deep pockets, actually. They've already done something and there is some AI being applied out there. What exactly is the effect of it? And I'm not exactly current on that. But it's possible to automate many of those things, actually, and all the techniques and technology that's available can actually cut down that cycle time to probably 1/100th of it, actually, and make it faster and more efficient. I wish from the top of my recall, actually, that's what I could come out with. If the gentleman would ask the question, if he offline or somewhere, actually, if he asked me what exactly he has in mind, maybe I'll be able to answer him better.
Sir, I'm just trying to understand that if we try to build a machine learning model, I mean, suppose, I'm getting 1 million data from some organization. I build a model on that. Now I move on. The organization also moves on. And then the organization moves on to three. And so how can I predict? I don't know. I have built a model on 1. So the organization, I built the model on 1. The organization moved on 3. Now the data structures start changing. The data starts moving. You can understand. I need not tell you. How the data moves. So so how, as a consultant, strictly as a consultant, how can I predict that? Okay, fine. I mean, this is how I can model the whole structure. That's my question, sir, to you. Thank you.
This is not, this is what I was talking about actually. Are you building a point solution? Or are you building a solution that is useful across the company wherever the decision is being taken? So that's a question actually that you really need to ask actually. So to some extent, this also depends on the project sponsor. Whoever has given you the project, the gentleman who has given you the project, he needs to be educated actually. If you are a consultant and if you are, I don't know if you're an external consultant or you're a part of that IT team within that company. If you can muster up enough courage, actually, you need to walk up to the project sponsor and you need to tell him that, look, you need to look at that whole picture and you need to understand the complete data life cycle. Where is that data coming from? You can't give me some Excel sheet based data, then I'll only be able to build you a one-time solution that probably you'll use it for a couple of months and after that you throw it into some dustbin. Actually, then it's not going to deliver real value to you. This is something that you need to tell them.
Right, sir.
I completely understand where you're coming from actually. So that is the reality of most companies. The reason why Gartner says 85% of the projects fail is essentially because the people who are assigning you the projects don't know what exactly they're doing.
So they don't know about what data is. They don't know what data is mine. They don't know that data is gold.
So somebody needs to educate them actually, probably. Yeah. So I insist on the people.
I believe this is the best session I've attended. I mean, for a very, very long time. I mean, it's like I'm thankful to Professor Rao. I mean, it's like for giving me the opportunity. I mean, for attending this. I mean,
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for patiently explaining the use case as well. I'll request now Ms. Chitra Sharma to ask. Yeah.
Very good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, my question is just related with do really this data creating, maintaining data is going to improve the quality of regarding the work which is being done? Do really it is going to improve the quality? Because like I am in education sector, and nowadays we know new education policy has come up, and UGC has come up with some mandatory data to be maintained, like NAC inspection is going on. So everybody is after creating the data. And I think being in teaching profession, I will say I'm good at teaching, but I'm more good in Excel, master in Excel and all. Every time we are creating the datas and all. And sometimes what we have seen that sometimes fake data is also being created just to come up to meet that benchmark and all these things. So do really all this data creating is improving the quality, or it's somehow things are going in the wrong direction?
I empathize with you actually. I completely understand where you're coming from. I don't even know, who is held responsible for the quality of data within this. I understand if you are working in a large university or a large, engineering college or an MBA college also. I hope that the Excel sheet is being maintained by only one person, across the institute. If it is multiple Excel sheet and each person has his own format, and then you have bigger nightmare actually, because you need to consolidate the data from across different Excel sheets into one Excel sheet and then send it to NAC, right? Then whoever is doing the job, actually he'll end up working, he or she will end up actually working late nights for a few weeks before he can send anything meaningful to NAC. I understand where you come from. The simpler method would be to, even if it is Excel sheet, actually try and standardize the Excel sheet, have a standard that you follow. Everybody collects that data, who collects the data will report into one single person, and make sure that the data fields within Excel sheets are locked. You build validation rules actually. Data validation rules can be, even in Excel, actually can build validation rules. And over a period of time, if there is a small web-based application you can build for that purpose, then your life would become easier. in a small web application that replaces your Excel sheet so that everybody would access and everybody would write into, would actually make your life easier. Both the people who are creating the data, people who are using the data, both kind of stakeholders, if they access the same application, same web application, then life would be easier actually. So probably you need to move towards that direction. And one other important thing is actually, I don't know how much of data that you are creating within the Excel sheet is also used in by other people within that within the institute, within the university. Then you need a method for your columns to match the columns of other people, whatever the other people are maintaining. Then you need a master data management for across the institute. Actually, you need a method to consolidate everything that is happening across the institute into an Excel sheet, into a single Excel sheet. Actually, you probably need a web application that actually that integrates everything that you do within the company, within that institute, within the university. I don't know. I need to understand what you guys are going through. But the sooner you do it, the better, because I'm sure Government of India, the demand for data is only going to go up, and somebody is going to come and actually conduct some audit at some point of time and tell you that your data security, your data practices are bad. And before they actually tell you that, you better actually get it right. That's what I would advise.
Yeah, it largely focuses on data discipline or data policy of the organization and
Correct.
data usability across subsegments of institution. At one end, it is largely driven by the pressure mounted upon institutions from regulators. On the other, it also spills into what is called creating fake data to show better in rankings and accreditation process. But looking below, I think we need to have data validation rules, and we also need to have data security process in place. And yes, it's a long way to go for most of us. Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll quickly take up a question from Ms. Lavanya.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Lavanya.
So there is the low code versus the no code of creation. So given the difference between consultants and techies, as you have pointed out, what do you think is the future of no code technologies?
I'll tell you, I don't know how many of those no codes actually will finally be there in the market actually. But see, if you're learning no code application, how to use no code application is not good as not learning anything. That is what I don't know if you're a techie or you're a management.
I'm a PhD in international business.
Okay, so you're not a techie. If you're not a techie, actually, then you can use whatever no code technology that is there. In fact, don't go for low code also. Actually, go for no code if you could. If you can master it, actually start using it, build small applications using it. I would advocate that. I would definitely advocate that. I have fundamental difference with all this low code, no code. I have not, in my experience actually, but my information is a little dated actually. About 4 or 5 years back is last when I tried that technology. So I don't know, maybe it has improved in the last 4 or 5 years. My problem is actually I've been working on that low code, no code stuff from DCOM days actually. I used to work for a product company, ERP product company called Ramco Systems in 90s. Worked on Aries, the BPM tool. Professor Sheer Aries is supposed to be the backbone of SAP. I used to, from those days actually, I used to hear about, can we automate this entire, can we componentize the entire code? That's something that we used to talk about. But my experience is componentizing code is extremely difficult, extremely difficult actually. And even if, even creating a library that everybody could use, one common library of components, software that people have written actually, that itself I used to find it difficult in services companies that I worked for, software services company that I work for. So my experience is bad, but that doesn't mean that the market has not improved actually. So I would reserve my judgment But if you have some no-code application, go for it. Actually, please go for it. Try it out. If not anything else, actually, you would learn how to do it. If you learn how to do it, actually, so you would understand the logic of how it is built. So there's nothing wrong. Even if it is not useful right away to you, tomorrow if there is a better no-code application, you'll be able to use whatever that you learned into that. So please do.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot,
sir.
sir.
Thank you. So go for it. No-code application is at least better, not as bad as doing nothing.
Yes,
Learning nothing.
see, low-code application also, you need some code to be written, and she is not a techie, she won't be able to. So it's as good as, so there's no point depending on a third party actually for you to do something, if you can do it without that.
Thank you, sir. Thanks
Thank
for
you, sir.
elucidating that. We'll quickly take this question from Neelam Murali Kishore.
Good evening, sir. Can you all hear me, please? Thank you very much, Mr. Krishna, for coming, and it was a wonderful, actually, insight given by you. And I was a bit late actually in joining, and I will request the presentation kit from actually Mr. Rao. My background is I'm basically from ERP side. I've been actually playing a role in SAP space for quite some time. And I was working for a company called Reliance Global Services at Hyderabad. And the way what I could see is that you have said beautiful point that objectives are important. The dollar value, trying to figure what is the objective actually getting into this the spectrum of data. And my experience for sales side, what happened was I was actually following up for one outstanding amount worth of about 10 lakhs. I was recording the data, as you said very rightly, in the Excel sheet every day, how many minutes I spoke, what for I spoke, and what are the feedbacks given by them systematically for 9 months. I understood that for 10 lakhs outstanding payment, I've spent 3 lakhs by way of visits and making calls. And I lost 5 crores of opportunity. And then I realized actually I would have kept one guy to actually follow up this payment. I would have actually achieved that 5 crores business. So the point is recording the data is very, very important. And I'm very delighted to be in this actually session. I seek your guidelines, taking the contact section. The way I could see organizations can benefit immensely in coming times. Thank you very much, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I am Murli from WiseViews system, presently working there. Thanks a lot.
Good luck, Murli. Good luck to you.
Yeah, Sanjay.
Thanks, Sudhakar. Hi, KP. What a complex presentation you have been able to rig up here. I was just thinking, Murli has actually raised the key point that I had also put as a question. Am I audible?
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's a little bit of noise behind me, so you'll have to bear with that because I'm actually on the road. The fact remains that how much data and how much of the data can you actually capture before you let experience and intuition take over to actually take your decision making. That is the key decision that also organizations have to make. And data-driven organizations are only relevant beyond the first point of actually, if you remember, our ICFAI management consulting assignment was what led to TI cycles becoming a data-driven organization, because we sat down, prioritized what the business case was, what was the dollar value to be saved, which markets were to be addressed, how the working capital had to be managed, got into the detailing of each and every component of the working capital, the raw material on the shop floor, the working capital, the finished goods, the debtors, and the creditors. So each of these stories are actually data driven before the business case and the entire end result could be addressed, which of course led for that company to become a super profitable company subsequently, 2000 onwards. And you know that could have been one of the use cases I think you should document as a feeder to a data driven organization, because unless there is intelligence and there is intuition first driving you to prioritize what decisions to actually put on data or monitoring, whether it is outstanding and how much money or time that is spent in following up a debtor or getting in a new executive in the place, you will actually lose out money as a business case. So that's where I think if you can share your insight and thought about where does that boundary end, where you start a data-driven organization or you leave a data-driven organization and let intuition take over for the decision making, that could also help the youngsters over here.
See, the problem is actually your intuition tells you different things at different times. what they call the collective gut based decision making. So basically, if there is a group of people, for example, your top management of TA Cycles is sitting there in one room and taking decision, each of their guts would tell them a different thing at a point of time. So how exactly are they going to reconcile and actually take a call? If it is data telling them something, then there is some commonality and they'll be able to take a decision. They'll be able to actually make sense out of what they're, depending on whether you are what you had for breakfast and, whether you had a good day at home or not. Actually, you'll end up actually taking.
No. One second. Let me take you a step back. Remember, we actually made the intuition work because of the data that we collected. It was not the other way around. It was not intuition-driven data. After identifying where the business problems were, the data sources were identified, the boundaries were put, data, the SFA that I built for them, the data management that was done.
Let me.
So it is a two-way process. It's iterative.
If I understand you right, actually, probably some places you would think that there's a part of the data that you need that you don't have actually. Then let's say 90% of the data that you need actually is in front of you and it tells you a story. Rest 10% actually can be left to your intuition. Is what, if I understand you right, that is what you're saying, right? If 80% of the data, 90% of the data, 90% of the data that you need for a decision is available to you, and it tells you a story out there. Actually, for example, data tells you that look, you can take either one of these two options. Earlier there were 10 options. Now it has come down to 2 options. Let's say within those 2 options, if you want to exercise your intuition and take that call, yes, of course you can. You obviously. Your decision making is that much better, definitely. See, the TA Cycles is another company that I know fairly well. I don't know whether you worked, but my understanding is a little dated, a decade and a half back actually. But I know the company and its history fairly well, at least till 2012. Okay, so I understand where you're coming from. If your data is given you about 80, it has taken you 80% towards a black and white decision, that 10%, 20% gray is quite all right. In fact, you're that much better off for it actually. That kind of intuition is fine. There's nothing wrong. But if your data tells you, choose between these 2 options, and your gut tells you no, you go for a 3rd option, then there's something wrong. You need to qualify that kind of a thing actually. What is your data telling you versus what call you're taking? See, in the it's not actually there as it actually, but there's something called a decision audit that people do in some companies actually. So it's done for large value decisions actually. Large value decisions, basically they try and check how did you do it, especially in public sector companies, government spending. For example, somebody has spent $1 billion or something. They need to understand how exactly this decision is taken, actually, based on what data. Do you have some solid base in data, or you are taken a decision purely based on your gut? So, when something of that kind happens, a decision audit happens, whatever decision that you are taken, it should be able to stand scrutiny by the auditors. As long as you have something of that kind, it's fine. Your gut is fine. Your intuition is fine.
Thanks. That's true.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. For want of time, what I would like to do is I'll request Professor Prasad if he has any unfinished question to raise that, and then we'll wrap it up.
I think one of the questions which was there, slightly off the main topic. So we have this, the blue ocean strategy concept, which Kim and Mark Byrne have put up, and they are non-existent business. They are businesses which have not yet come up, and you got red oceans which are established businesses which are already there. Now, if you want to come up with insights which are related to blue oceans, what do we do?
Say, I don't know how much of data you have. If you don't have data, you can try and source the data that you need actually for that. It's basically, end of the day, when you expand, either you take a new product to an existing market, or you take a new product to a new market, right? So I don't know. In your case, it's a services actually, right? A new service, a new new course, for example, actually to a new market. I don't know whether it could be a target market within India, within different geography, for a new target segment within the country. Whatever it is actually, you could try and source the data, collect the data. If you don't have data, you could go for a sampling technique. You could try and actually look for a representative sample within that territory, within that target segment. And you, based on that sample that you collect, actually, you analyze the data and take a call. And as long as you have a random sample and the sampling is done, Prasad, I'm sure you know, I don't have to tell you statistics, actually. I'm sure you understand that much better than I do. So as long as you have that right kind of method for it, actually, you would have something to go by. You have method to that whole, blue ocean strategy. Whether that works all the time or not, my guess is actually if you start doing it, even if it doesn't work for the first couple of attempts, actually, or third attempt, fourth attempt, you'll get your process right. It'll improve over a period of time, and you'll have that method you can attempt continuous improvement actually. So you need to do some what do you call that, collective thinking. You need to sit as a group, and whoever is involved with that blue ocean strategy, you need to sit together and think it through. See, I'm a big believer in balanced scorecard. Okay, so when we was a part of the balanced scorecard that I used to actually have a problem with is when you're talking about new products, new markets kind of a thing, because you have nothing actually to go by. There it's your imagination. But I used to tell them, whatever is the business plan that you have, actually, you put those numbers out there as a must actually. If not anything else, your business plan can be validated after a quarter or a couple of quarters. If nothing is going as per the plan, then obviously your plan itself is wrong, right? So it's important for you to create and use the data. If not anything else, actually, in a couple of quarters, you'll be able to validate what you're doing right and what you're not doing right. You'll be able to validate your process, your method, your data. That's my experience.
Thank you. I think there is some direction in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's been a very engaging conversation for the last 1.5 hours that we started talking about this topic. Some of the very important highlights is that identify the decision that you would like to take and look for the data and what kind of gaps are required to support that decision. And then, of course, that necessitates you to have standards, policies, governance, frameworks, and things like that. One of them is data definitions across multiple geographies if the organization is pretty large. And how do we consolidate the information seeking, and centralizing it and ownership being single could help. Master data management being built. Yes, one very strong point that you mentioned is stop using Excel sheets and move to some of the applications, web applications or IT applications that you can build your organization on.
Excel sheets represent, sorry for interjecting actually what you're saying. Excel sheets, I don't know if you heard of theory of constraints, Goldratt's. Actually, I keep telling people that supply chain in an organization is not a unitary supply chain. It's actually a complex web of multiple supply chain. You have cash flow supply chain. You also have an information supply chain. All of them need to work in tandem to for you to get to what you want, the maximum efficiency. The information supply chain bottlenecks essentially are measured by the number of Excel sheets that are floating in an organization. Okay, so I would say it's a huge concept actually. It's not very well understood actually, and there are very few people who are researching on the subject. Not too many. I would. I'm sorry. My apologies for interjecting. Interrupting your thought process, Sudhakar. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm only trying to summarize and capture bigger points.
Right.
But if you wanted to clarify, like in case of stopping the usage of Excel sheets and how those Excel sheets are measured in terms of the bottlenecks for information supply chain, that's a point very well qualified by you. The other point that you mentioned is that data-driven vis-a-vis intuition-based decision-making. I think Sanjay has raised that point at an appropriate time. And advice to those non-techies is at least go for learning and understanding the no-code applications. So these are some of the broad points, but when you take decisions, I think the entire discipline will fall in place, and the culture, which you spent little time about explaining what kind of culture we should have in the organization, is basically enterprise-wide recognition that this data works. And so it is like walking the talk, not just as you also have mentioned in your own words, calling a few consultants, conducting workshops, and the big ticket engagements, but more importantly, the infinitesimal decisions that we take, and the way we talk about, and the way we create the importance, significance for data in the organization across all the units. I think that's where it matters, and that's how the culture is set. So these are the ingredients of building a data-driven organization. And in modern language, of course, it is powered by AI, apart from being data-driven. This is quite essential. We have just actually seen the tip of the iceberg. I think we need to read the book written by Mr. Krishna Pera, and we would definitely do well to do so. We will read more about the reviews and the summaries written for your book as well, apart from reading the book, sir. Thank you very much for providing this preview into how one creates a data-driven organization, and how it is going to be more and more essential, and how it is continuing to see challenges when you create a business case for data-driven organizations. It's not an easy task, and there's a long way to go. Thank you so much for your time, expertise, and energy in creating this wonderful conversation and making a thought-provoking bullet points for us to go back and do our homework. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All.
And ladies and gentlemen, we will meet next week on 29th of December at 6:30 p.m. for the 133rd session. We are going to be joined by Dr. Madabhushi Sridhar, Central Information Commissioner. He was a former Central Information Commissioner. He is going to talk about RTI and the constitutional governance. Very, very important. We will come back and learn more about this RTI and constitutional governance next Friday. Till then, keep reading about data-driven organizations and the book written by Dr. Krishna Pera. So thank you all, and see you next week.